Greetings and welcome to this virtual launch of the Blue Carbon Handbook on blue carbon as a nature-based solution for climate action and sustainable development. This event is organised by the High-Level Panel for a Sustainable Ocean Economy, or the Ocean Panel for short, and in collaboration with the Blue Carbon Initiative and the International Partnership for Blue Carbon. The handbook was commissioned by the Ocean Panel to establish a reference guide to help non-specialists gain an understanding of blue carbon and in turn support decision-making towards the goal of accelerating ocean action. This has been a collective endeavour, and I extend my thanks and gratitude to the group of blue carbon experts who have collaborated to author this handbook, consolidating key information on topics ranging from the technical potential of blue carbon ecosystems for climate mitigation to setting out new developments on carbon markets and the importance of high quality principles, from highlighting the range of local adaptation and resilience benefits to setting out the global policy landscape to advance ocean action towards climate, biodiversity and sustainable development goals. To briefly introduce myself, I'm Stephanie Ockenden, Global Policy Lead for the Ocean Programme at the World Resources Institute, and where it's my honour to be moderating today's event alongside a distinguished panel. Before we jump into the substance, it's my duty to share a few brief housekeeping items. Firstly, today's report, along with all other knowledge products commissioned by the Ocean Panel, is available on the Ocean Panel website, that's oceanpanel.org, or please see the link in the chat box. Secondly, we hope to have time to respond to questions from you, the audience, and so I really encourage you to post your questions in the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen. Please indicate which panelist you'd like to respond if you have a preference, and be sure to make sure what you write is a question. Thirdly, today's webinar is being recorded and you will receive a message within the next week for details to access this. And lastly, we welcome engagement throughout the webinar on Twitter using the hashtag #BlueCarbon. By way of introduction, for those of you who haven't joined us before, let me start with a brief overview of the Ocean Panel. Established in September 2018, the High-Level Panel for a Sustainable Ocean Economy represents 17 serving world leaders, co-chaired by the Prime Minister of Norway and President of Palau, with support from the UN Secretary General's Special Envoy for the Ocean. As you can see from the map, the Ocean Panel is truly unique, comprising members from across the world, nations large and small, across all ocean basins, at every stage of economic development, at every extreme of the ocean environment, from the tropics to the Arctic. The Ocean Panel together collectively account for 50% of the world's coastlines, 44% of the world's exclusive economic zones, 26% of the world's fisheries, and 20% of the world's shipping fleet. The Ocean Panel aims to facilitate a better, more resilient future for people and the planet. The goal, to deliver a sustainable ocean economy where effective protection, sustainable production, and equitable prosperity go hand in hand. The means, through 100% sustainable management of national waters, guided by sustainable ocean plans. The Ocean Panel has been working to achieve its key objectives through harnessing the latest ocean knowledge and developing an action agenda for transitioning to a sustainable ocean economy. And in demonstration of this commitment, we launch the Blue Carbon Handbook today. With this, it's my pleasure to introduce our panel. Firstly, Lisa Schindler-Murray, who is one of the lead coordinating authors of the Blue Carbon Handbook. Lisa is the Director of Natural Climate Solutions on Blue Carbon at RARE. And I'm also delighted to introduce the following experts who will join us in discussion to bring blue carbon to life. I warmly welcome Edward Donaldson-Ballan, International Ocean Climate Change Policy Advisor at the UK's Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, James Cairo, Chief Scientist at the Kenya Marine and Fisheries Research Institute, and Emily Kelly, Lead for the Blue Carbon and the Ocean Action Agenda at the World Economic Forum. Dear panel, thank you for joining us today. I will now give the floor to Lisa to guide us through the key messages and findings of this handbook. Lisa, over to you.
Thank you for the introduction, Stephanie, and the opportunity to be with you here today. As mentioned, the Ocean Panel commissioned this special report partially as a way to help members achieve the goals from the Ocean Panel transformation document, such as this one on the screen. You'll notice that this goal does not directly mention blue carbon. This is one of the ways that the Blue Carbon Handbook aims to demystify all things blue carbon by providing that recognition and understanding that blue carbon refers to actions that aim to protect, restore, and sustainably manage healthy, productive coastal blue carbon ecosystems. We are thrilled to be launching the Blue Carbon Handbook here with you today, as it's intended to be a go-to resource on the latest science, policy, and project advancements. We view it as a valuable resource to those new in the space and looking to familiarize themselves with blue carbon, as well as providing new content for experts. As such, it's written for a non-specialist or a non-technical audience by providing an easy-to-digest overview across each topic, as well as a robust section on the key resources and respective links that one could reference if you wanted to dive deeper into any topic. The key resources section is particularly exciting as it's a compilation of the most up-to-date resources and tools. It's certainly not fully exhaustive, but it is an attempt to help direct governments and other actors to trusted sources that are the most up-to-date information. It also has a broader FAQ or frequently asked questions section of common questions that we hope offers this additional functionality to the resource. The handbook was developed to be comprehensive while also easily used as a quick reference. The topics covered are listed here in the box, ranging from science, policy, social safeguards, project development, finance, including markets and alternative funding and partnerships. And each section distills these key concepts. It offers a current state of play and provides an overview of other emerging issues and gaps within that topic area. And as we know, blue carbon is a topic with increasing global interest. So we are really excited to share the report today as it provides this concise summary per topic while still identifying where there are opportunities for further research, pilots, and funding. We also envision the handbook being actionable to support the preparation of sustainable ocean plans. And as you'll see in the report, blue carbon actions can be cross-sectoral and critical for climate mitigation or adaptation action, increasing resilience and livelihoods, protecting biodiversity and sustainable development. And thus it's particularly relevant for a variety of national policies and actions. To briefly summarize our report findings, action on the ground around blue carbon is really at the heart of the local to global approach to address global challenges like climate change, biodiversity loss, and sustainable development with real impacts at the local level. In the report, we define blue carbon ecosystems as mangroves, seagrass, and tidal salt marshes, although we note that other emerging ecosystems like kelp and others are part of the broader carbon cycle and may be part of the conversation going forward. These blue carbon ecosystems are a critical ally in tackling the climate crisis for both mitigation and adaptation. To put it in perspective, worldwide, blue carbon ecosystems are estimated to store 6 to 12 gigatons of carbon in their biomass in soils on a per hectare basis. Given this potential scale, it's certainly one of the critical tools to support climate action. Although it's not a silver bullet, blue carbon, like any other nature-based solution, needs to be paired with other emission reduction measures in order to achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement. Despite the recognition of the importance of these ecosystems, they are still threatened by coastal development and the impacts of climate change, among others. It's estimated that globally, 50% of salt marshes, 35% of mangroves, and 29% of seagrasses have been degraded or lost since the mid-20th century. And of course, those numbers change at national and local levels. There are some glimmers of resources flowing to nature-based solutions, including one of them. It's also becoming clearer of the role that healthy coastal ecosystems play in supporting countries to achieve their national targets around climate change or biodiversity, whether that's in the UNFCCC or the CBD. And that's including blue carbon as a priority in national reports like nationally determined contributions for the Paris Agreement or national biodiversity strategic action plans for the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. When you hear blue carbon, you might first think carbon markets. And while blue carbon is currently a small slice of the carbon market pie, only about 0.15% of all voluntary carbon market credits issued by Verra in 2022 are blue carbon related. The demand for blue carbon credits is growing, and the supply potential is likely favorable, but sometimes the details can be confusing or needing to better understand where the trends are going. In the report, we cover both voluntary markets and regulatory market topics, although we're primarily talking about voluntary carbon markets at the moment rather than regulatory or jurisdictional approaches. The report also includes a section on other alternative financing opportunities beyond carbon markets. And one of the takeaways from the report is that financial mechanisms to support blue carbon action could be both market-based or non-market-based. And it does not always need to be linked to a carbon market. And in some cases, it's better not to. We do know that carbon markets is a hot topic, and there are benefits and risks, including concerns around social and environmental quality and integrity, and particularly given that this is a relatively nascent space for blue carbon. Blue carbon does have the benefit of learning from other nature-based approaches like REDD+, but there are still real barriers and challenges, and many of which are similar across nature-based solutions more broadly that are looking to engage in the carbon market, like the high startup and feasibility costs, limited MRV, concerns about uncertainty, the need for investable project pipelines, among others. And looking beyond carbon markets, we note in the report that integration into broader coastal infrastructure projects or focusing on climate adaptation or resilience benefits can make finance more accessible beyond a market approach. So one example we highlight is the high quality blue carbon market principles document that was recently released. It resulted from an extensive consultation process and aimed to promote clear voluntary principles for project developers to ensure the support and development of high quality projects and to help define what that looks like. The 5 core principles are to safeguard nature, empower people, employ the best information, interventions and carbon accounting practices, operate locally and contextually, and to mobilize high integrity capital. For any project, whether it's market or non-market, a topic that came up was an often overlooked but critical aspect of blue carbon projects. And that's building trust with the local communities and other relevant stakeholders, including municipal governments or small-scale fishing communities who live and work in the area. Community engagement and empowerment is particularly critical for gender equality as well, and promoting women's participation in implementation doesn't necessarily imply changing culture or customs, but rather ensuring that women have a voice that leads to the durability of the project interventions and healthy families. It's local communities that are often the first to recognize and feel the services that healthy coastal ecosystems beyond carbon provide, and that's like food security or storm surge protection. While local communities are vital actors in successful nature-based solution projects, it's essential that steps be taken by project developers or policymakers to safeguard local communities against potentially negative consequences. And that can be done in some of the following ways: to ensure and identify clear legal pathways to enable secure land tenure or management rights of their natural assets, to carefully follow FPIC procedures, to co-develop social safeguards and relevant systems for responsible implementation, and to ensure that transparent legal frameworks are in place for local participation and leadership, including benefit sharing. As with the report itself that was co-developed by the Blue Carbon Initiative and the International Partnership for Blue Carbon, international partnerships are critical collaborations to share experience, develop trust, and community. And there are some existing global and regional initiatives that have been focused on bringing the blue carbon community together already. The Blue Carbon Initiative and the International Partnership for Blue Carbon are two of the most longstanding global initiatives focusing specifically on the protection and restoration of coastal blue carbon ecosystems for climate mitigation and adaptation. And both aim to support countries' implementation and prioritization of blue carbon relevant policies and actions. At the global level, several other initiatives have been launched to address the multiple dimensions of blue carbon, including science, policy, project implementation, and increasingly finance, contributing to developing a diverse community that's available for governments, scientists, and practitioners, all for a platform to exchange information and collaborate. And some of those partnerships are more ecosystem specific, like the Global Mangrove Alliance. And this image on the screen is from the report that shows the Venn diagram of some of these existing global and regional partnerships across these themes. In the report, we also noted that at the regional level, there's an opportunity to increase collaboration to benefit from exchanges at a smaller scale as well. So investment in research and capacity building and supporting clear local or national policies are needed, but could benefit from these collaborations between governments, international organizations, scientific institutions, private sector, and local communities. And again, some of these are represented here in this Venn diagram. And we're thrilled that the Ocean Panel has commissioned this special report on blue carbon to help further identify and address these needs and gaps, and look forward to launching the full report today to demonstrate how blue carbon can be part of the solution to address climate mitigation and adaptation, biodiversity, livelihoods, all while ensuring the needs of both people and nature are met. So with that, I'd like to thank and share my deep appreciation for the entire author team. As you can see from the screen, it was a team effort with a range of experts and expertise. And so we hope that this resource is useful and functional for you and your colleagues, so to use it as a go-to resource for blue carbon action. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to the question and answer and discussion going forward.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And again, my many thanks to you and the author team. The handbook does an incredible job at distilling a whole wealth of information, and you've just done a fantastic job at distilling that into a really snappy presentation. I would really encourage the audience to go to the link and download the report. It's a great resource. You can either choose to read it from cover to cover or dive into particular aspects. It's a great reference point for all that's going on across the blue carbon space. And now, through the panel discussion, really look forward to bringing blue carbon to life and hearing from our range of expert speakers. First, I'm going to turn to Ed, who is part of the UK team who played a key role in raising the visibility of the ocean in Glasgow and was recently at the UNFCCC Ocean Climate Dialogue, which put the spotlight on coastal ecosystems, including blue carbon. Ed, how can international goals and commitments, such as those under the UNFCCC and the Global Biodiversity Framework, how can they drive forward domestic action?
Thanks very much for the question, Stefan, and good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everybody. I think the short answer is they can be fundamental to driving national action. The threat to these habitats and to the livelihoods they support are global, and the response needs to be global as well. So the multilateral system, like the UNFCCC, like CBD, can set and raise the bar for action, and it can help deliver and mobilize the finance and science needed to implement action. The UNFCCC is central to this. It's made real strides forward in the last few years, as you just alluded to. So Chile's Blue COP25, going back to 2019, really elevated the ocean within UNFCCC discussions and resulted in a one-off ocean dialogue. COP26 in Glasgow really built on that. And there were two key developments in the Glasgow Climate Pact that are relevant. The first was it made that dialogue annual. So it made it a permanent fixture, as it were, within UNFCCC. And then the second was an invitation from parties to the work programs and the constituted bodies in the UNFCCC to strengthen and integrate ocean action into their work. So from a UK perspective, the work now is about how these produce results and how we build on these outcomes. Ultimately, it means how they help parties to integrate ocean action into NDCs and adaptation plans, other commitments under the UNFCCC. Speaking to our national experience, these are issues we're working to address in the UK. So just to give two examples, firstly, we've set up a blue carbon evidence partnership to identify and address key evidence gaps that are barriers to action on blue carbon. And we just published an evidence needs statement on World Ocean Day recently, setting out those gaps. And secondly, we're integrating marine nature-based solutions into our national adaptation program, recognizing the adaptation benefits that the blue carbon habitats provide. That's due to be published this year. And then finally, going back to Lisa's excellent presentation, this isn't just about UNFCCC. Blue carbon isn't just about carbon sequestration, it's not just about adaptation, but also biodiversity, food security, livelihoods, to name a few things. So the global biodiversity framework under the CBD is hugely significant here, with several targets relevant to blue carbon ecosystems. Target 2 on restoration, target 3 on 30 by 30, target 8 on minimizing the impact of climate change and ocean acidification. So the challenge now is to draw out the synergies at international and national levels so that parties can take integrated action to fulfill their CBD and UNFCCC commitments. Thanks very much, Steph.
Thank you, Ed, and thank you for really bringing to life what's happening in the UK. You've brought out that importance of focusing on the synergies, the interactions, that holistic approach, recognising blue carbon as a nature-based solution for climate biodiversity. And you really highlighted the importance of the science, and I congratulate the UK team on the publication of your evidence needs statement. Going to next turn to our following speaker, Emily, where at the World Economic Forum, Emily's been leading the Blue Carbon Action Partnership, seeking to scale blue carbon benefits. And really keen to hear more about that experience. So over to you, Emily. How can Blue Carbon Action, or how is the Blue Carbon Action Partnership really working to drive forward and finance blue carbon projects?
Thanks, Stephanie, and congrats to all on the launch of the Blue Carbon booklet. Really exciting, and Lisa, thanks for the wonderful presentation highlighting some of those key parts. It's such a meaty document, and really impressed by how you distilled that, and really excited about all the details that lie within it. Thanks for the question, Stephanie, and really happy to share a little bit more about the Blue Carbon Action Partnership, which we launched in March. The goal of the Blue Carbon Action Partnership, or BCAP for short, is twofold. First, to support countries in their blue carbon ambitions, and second, to work with partners at a global level to connect with blue carbon projects and help crack tough challenges that exist for taking blue carbon to scale. So on the first, we aim to support countries in achieving their blue carbon ambitions. And those could be a variety of different things. And I think both Ed and Lisa alluded to the ways in which countries are thinking about blue carbon, could be including in NDCs, could be thinking about engaging in carbon markets, many other elements of including blue carbon in a broader blue economy approach. For many countries, blue carbon is managed across multiple ministries, all with multiple KPIs. And our goal is to support in streamlining and aligning existing and future blue carbon efforts, which can further unlock larger investments into blue carbon ecosystems. And so hopefully driving that finance piece within that. On the second point, at a global level for BCAP, wanted to highlight a couple of things. One is the Mangroves Working Group that be running now through the Blue Carbon Action Partnership in collaboration with our colleagues at 1t.org. And this is a mechanism for businesses to take high quality action to execute their ESG, climate, and nature positive strategies. The group is a mix of corporate partners and experts with regular connects with suppliers. And one of the goals is to better link supply and demand with for high quality projects. The group also took on the task last year of asking the question, what is high quality? And Lisa referenced this as it's included in the booklet, that a subset of international experts from the group worked to identify the shared vision from the blue carbon community of high quality blue carbon projects and credits, and launched the report on high quality blue carbon principles and guidance at COP27. Just wanted to note that there are more than 70 organizations that contributed to and endorsed the guidelines. And there are 19 influential early adopters showcasing how to use the principles and guidelines, and always looking for additional early adopters for those that might be interested in this call. So wanted to also note on a global level, one of the core challenges I know we're all thinking about is getting investment to scale. And the Blue Carbon Action Partnership is certainly very keen to be thinking more deeply about this with many of you and with additional finance partners to dig into this topic with the goal of answering some of the questions that investors have right now that might prevent them from getting into blue carbon more deeply, and then with the goal of unlocking investment. More to come here as we get into the fall and launching some new initiatives in the fall under BCAP. I'm happy to answer more questions about it.
Thank you, Emily, and we will look forward to that launch in the fall for sure. You've really nicely brought out that need to scale up investment, that need for quantity, sorry, but also that need for quality in terms of high quality and the fantastic work that the community, a whole range of organisations have led in terms of high quality principles. The report certainly does give a good elaboration of that, and I'm really keen to explore that through our next few panel interventions as well. And so with this, I turn to James, who has a whole wealth of experience in country and on the ground in Kenya. And we're really keen to hear from you, James, in terms of what best practices have encouraged the development of high quality blue carbon projects in Kenya.
Thank you, Stephanie, and also the panel and those who are listening to us. Yeah, really, I have to say we have moved a stage ahead. Kenya pioneered the first blue carbon project, the Mikoko Pamoja, which was the first one to trade and restore mangrove, to restore and protect mangrove through sales of carbon credit. And this we started in 2013. And we, out of that, we were able to replicate Mikoko Pamoja to Vanga Blue Forest. But when you look at the elements that has made Vanga Blue Forest and Mikoko Pamoja successful, is because of the government support, an understanding community, good science, and international partnership. These are the same principles that will guide development of similar project anywhere on earth. When I come to the government has been very supportive. For instance, we do have the National Mangrove Management Plan. And this plan is a toolbook, is that provide a roadmap of what to do with the mangrove and where. Through the National Mangrove Management Plan, the government has been able also to initiate a National Mangrove Advisory Committee. So the government understands how complex mangrove and blue carbon ecosystems are. And we do have also the seagrass strategy and the same approaches where the government comes and develop an advisory group. So together with Mikoko Pamoja and Vanga Blue Forest, we have been able even to attract a bigger funding through the European Union Go Blue project, the Nature Conservancy. We are moving to a bigger mangrove area. But our old principles, rather than emphasizing carbon alone, we are looking the bigger picture, what we call the co-benefits, because we need to understand the co-benefits of mangroves are far much wider than the tradable carbon. And if that one moves to, it will be able to use mangrove to answer the 3 global problems of climate change, biodiversity loss, and the human development. So we are using because of the support, the government, the science, the community, we are able to develop sustainable blue carbon project. Thank you.
Thank you so much, James. Amplifying there some of the key messages of the report and other speakers in terms of that whole range of benefits from blue carbon ecosystems and that need to take that holistic approach. I think you've really shared there some solid ingredients to success in terms of that need for government support and governance and frameworks for science and partnerships. And we'll explore some of those elements shortly. But first, I'm keen to delve a little bit more into the question of carbon markets. It's certainly been a hot topic of late. And I'm going to turn to Emily and ask you, what are the opportunities and challenges that carbon markets present when it comes to blue carbon?
Thanks, Steph. Yeah, we see carbon markets as really an opportunity to bring investment into conservation and restorations of these ecosystems at scale. And of course, I think everyone has talked about and is on everyone's mind that carbon is just one of the myriad benefits of these ecosystems. So food security, livelihoods, cultural value, biodiversity, storm protection, and more are all certainly huge elements. And as Lisa mentioned in the report, communities are often talking about the benefits that they see first. And many of those are, I would argue, are not carbon. But that being said, there's a real opportunity for carbon markets to be able to drive investment into these ecosystems for the carbon storage benefit, and then with the wonderful advantage of gaining all these other values for communities and ecosystems. So in terms of how markets can benefit suppliers, carbon markets can help assure suppliers of long-term demand to give them confidence in developing projects. And a key element here is also, of course, ensuring that this is demand for high quality projects. But there are a lot of challenges, of course, too. One of those is considering how to regulate such a market to ensure high quality supply and to de-risk the space to scale investment to the level that we need to support communities and meet global climate and biodiversity goals. So our team is really interested in thinking about this in a variety of different ways. I know those authors in the booklet have also put a lot of thought into this. One thing that we're really interested in is thinking about regional markets that might offer an opportunity to create credible and regulated markets that are most regionally relevant and can support getting high quality projects financed. Just wanted to highlight back also that I think there are a number of different ways that stakeholders can think about their ESG investment goals. And so there are other types of finance. And I know the booklet also outlines non-carbon approaches to this. But that being said, we're quite supportive in developing a regulated carbon market and also thinking about anticipating the benefits of scaling blue carbon. And BCAP will be really looking to engage more deeply in this.
Thank you so much, Emily, and a great elaboration there of those opportunities, challenges, and where it's really important that as a community we learn and we continue to learn and share our findings. And on that note, I'm going to next turn to James and ask James if you can share a little bit more about some of the lessons that you've learned in Kenya from your experience in the blue carbon space.
Thank you so much for the question. The lesson learned, I said we initiated the Blue Carbon project with the Mikoko Pamoja. We replicated that to Vanga Blue Forest. What have we learned? We have learned that the community ownership is essential. Whatever we are doing, if the community doesn't own, and they can only own when they understand the value of the system and the danger that is associated when these systems are lost or degraded. Another lesson we have learned is the adaptive management part of it. Learning is a process. You cannot replicate a village, but you can replicate a method. So when we are moving from one village to another, we know the differences from a village A to B. So when we move from Gazi to Vanga, as much as they are the same cultural context, but the setup, the governance is different. So that aspect of adaptive, and which we learn as we move. Then we have learned that you need a lot of really supportive registrations. You cannot move against the law. So most of your project must be anchored with the law of the land where you are working. And most of the law of the land supports environmental management. And that's what we have, fisheries, good fisheries management. So that's what we have anchored our project in. Lastly, it's really good to manage expectations. There's so much talking about how carbon can change the carbon trading. But if you cannot manage your expectation, and managing expectation comes with a very well-defined benefit sharing scheme. You need to understand the benefit and the cost, because sometimes we emphasize on benefit, we forget about the cost of developing the project. Who owns the project, the ecosystem in the first place? So all these players, and that's when you need a very good stakeholders analysis of who loses, who gains. So with all those contexts, you'll be able now to move to the next village. You understand the community, you educate them, you move slowly by slowly, but don't compare village A with the village B. It may work very well in Kenya, it may not work in another context, another country. So those are the processes we can share.
Thank you so much, James. That's such a great and strong lesson, I think, especially in terms of that need to think about adaptive replication. I think was your phrase, to really think about the different contexts and some of the key points you brought out in terms of thinking about community ownership, stakeholders, understanding the value, the risks, legislation, all critical aspects, many of which explored in the report, but really valuable lessons that you're sharing with us today. On that note, and looking at some of the questions that the audience are kindly sharing with us, I'm going to turn to Lisa to address one of the questions that we've had in the chat on, if I can just see it, on how we're working with communities. Lisa, are you happy to take that question?
Sure, and I think that the question was working with communities and specifically on gender inclusion, and so yes, so what we saw throughout the development of the report and in implementing a number of partners or working with partners working on blue carbon. Women often rely on fisheries that are associated with blue carbon ecosystems to feed their families, to ensure food security of the communities. And they often then, because of that, serve as critical natural resource managers. So what we found is that projects that, from a fisheries perspective in particular, but would also be applicable for blue carbon, projects that ensure women are involved women are involved in project design and implementation tend to be more inclusive across the community and have more long-term success in the interventions while ensuring that the needs of women and their families are heard and considered throughout that process.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And I think, James, did you want to come in on that question as well?
The question on community, that is, yeah, and the gender. What we realize in our system, there's a gendered aspect in marine exploitation, whether it's mangrove seagrasses, men will be deep fishers, while women will be grooming and also in marketing. So we need to identify the roles, the gendered aspect of different components. And what we have done within even our own constitution in Kenya, when we are doing the governance of the Blue Carbon project, we follow the constitution, which talks about the third rule. A third of the executive must be either gender. So with that, and the youth, of course. So with that, we have been able to integrate the whole spectrum of the society, because mangrove, the seagrasses, which are our major blue carbon ecosystem, they are represented by all the sector in the society, both the old and the youth and the different gender. So that has to be observed when you are developing a blue carbon project.
Thank you so much, James. And then turning to one of the other questions that we've had come through in the chat, I'm going to turn to Ed. Please, can you elaborate on the link between investing in blue carbon and meeting food security needs, SDG 2?
Yeah, of course, happy to, Steph, and thanks for the question. So put very simply, certain blue carbon habitats such as mangroves and seagrass are key habitats for juvenile species, and some of the species for which they are juvenile habitats for go on to be commercially valuable species. So we know that around 1 billion people in the world rely on seafood for their main source of protein. And with the current rates of loss of mangroves and seagrass, other blue carbon habitats, that's obviously quite a severe impact on food security if you're taking away the nurseries essentially for commercially important species.
Thank you so much, Ed. And perhaps going back, and apologies, I misread and mixed up some of the questions, but there's another question for James in terms of how can other ecosystem services and co-benefits be incorporated into monetary valuations of blue carbon ecosystems? So how can we value those wider benefits to really realize them? Over to you.
Wonderful question, Stephanie. I have to emphasize that mangroves are beyond carbon. They are biodiversity hotspots. And when we look at the bigger picture, most of the carbon standards have not traded the co-benefits. And what I like what the Plan Vivo is doing, for instance, they are trying to bring in the biodiversity offsetting, what we are calling the biodiversity credit. It will, and this one we are testing in one of our facilities, the Vanga Blue Forest, where we are thinking, how can we bundle the marine ecosystem services? Because mangroves are capturing carbon and they are very neighboring to seagrasses, which is also capturing carbon. But apart from carbon, there are fisheries function. There's other biodiversity function. So what we are doing with the Plan Vivo, we are testing if we could trade the real biodiversity value of this seagrass. We've not reached far because this is still the pilot area, but we are hoping we can put a dollar value. Because if mangroves are the breeding area for fish, they are breeding area for other wildlife. So that wildlife end up captured as for food security, that is, for fisheries function, for tourism, even for people come all the way to watch dolphin, to watch turtles, to watch sharks. The baby sharks breed in mangrove area and seagrass area. So we put a value on what's the value, dollar value of this biodiversity. I think it's doable. It's a bit complicated because of the boundary issue. It's not like carbon, which you can say the area basis. Fisheries migrate, but it's no boundary, but it is visible. And watch this space, you'll be seeing a fishery biodiversity offset, which will be incorporated in our carbon offset under Vanga Blue Forest. Thank you.
Thank you so much, James. No doubt a challenging area, but a really important one to explore. And we really look forward to, in due course, hearing more about the lessons from that pilot, because I think that's going to be invaluable for the community. On perhaps another similar sort of challenging issue, I've got a good question again from the audience for Lisa. How can conflicts between bottom contact fisheries and blue carbon ecosystems be addressed through blue carbon projects? So thinking about those tensions, over to you.
Thanks for the good question, Stephanie. So, for example, RARE has a long-standing history of working with small-scale fishers and local communities, taking a community-based and behavior-centered approach towards natural resource management. And so in our experience of working with the small-scale fishers and the communities, we're also protecting mangroves and seagrasses at the same time while thinking about the importance of climate resilience approaches like ecosystem-based adaptation, and thinking about how this is connected and why we can think about blue carbon as a way to improve food security through fisheries. These ecosystems are critical for fish nurseries, like we just heard from James, breeding grounds and other stages of fish life cycles. And so this nature-based solution of protecting coastal ecosystems can be both a blue carbon action, as well as to improve fisheries and food security. And thinking about this from an ecosystem-based approach is really critical to make that linkage between the two. So as the question notes, these really are, they can be complementary when implemented with that in mind.
Thanks so much, Lisa. So with challenge comes opportunity, and it is possible to find complementary solutions. Great example there. So next, going to turn to Ed. The UK has been working quite a lot internationally to support the acceleration of ocean action. I wonder if you could share a little bit more about the work going on in the UK.
Thanks so much, Steph. So yeah, I think the first thing to say is that we'll continue to work with others to champion making and implementing international commitments on blue carbon and ocean action more broadly. So we'll continue to advocate for the ocean in UNFCCC. As I said earlier, we're at the start of the journey there, really, and really embedding ocean into UNFCCC. And we'll continue our leadership through the Global Ocean Alliance and the High Ambition Coalition for Nature and People. So these are international coalitions which campaign for the 30 by 30 target in particular to be included in the CBD Global Biodiversity Framework. And they will now be working to support its implementation. And of course, we'll be contributing to the excellent leadership of the high-level panel who have brought us all here today. And then secondly, we're focused on what we can do on the key enablers of ocean action globally. And specifically, I'm talking here about science and mobilizing finance. So just to give a couple of relevant examples to this discussion. On science, we've co-founded the Global Ocean Decade Programme for Blue Carbon, which is a bit of a mouthful, I agree. It's part of the even more of a mouthful UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. And it will be working to build the capacity needed by ocean scientists, practitioners, and policymakers to ensure that blue carbon ecosystems are effectively protected and restored. And by the way, this is one of those organizations and bodies that was highlighted on Lisa's presentation earlier at the start of the webinar. And then secondly, on finance, our £500 million Blue Planet Fund is helping eligible countries reduce poverty and protect and sustainably manage their marine resources. There's a range of activities under it with a blue carbon focus. So just to highlight a couple, the Ocean and Country Partnership Programme, which is strengthening marine science expertise and developing a science-based policy and management tools. And then the £154 million Coast Programme, which aims to scale up marine nature-based solutions in priority countries. Thanks very much, Steph.
Thank you so much, Ed. A whole range of activities happening in that space. Many of the important enablers to support action on the ground, partnerships, science, finance, and really touching upon many aspects that panelists have brought out across this webinar as well. We have had a really good conversation about carbon markets, how to make them win-win, how to value the wide benefits. And I'm going to turn back to Emily on that very topic to share a little bit more about how to combine carbon markets with biodiversity as well. Emily, over to you.
Thanks, Stephanie. Just wanted to follow up on the wonderful work that James is remarked on, and note also that one of the things that we have been exploring from the World Economic Forum side is thinking about biodiversity certificates as well, and how that might be shaped in a variety of different ecosystems. We've been collaborating on this, thinking about blue carbon, and oftentimes we talk about how a blue carbon credit, a really high quality blue carbon credit, in some ways internalizes that biodiversity element and the community element and a variety of other pieces in garnering a high price in the market. But how can we think about that much more intentionally? So this is one of the things that we're working on from the forum side, and really keen to chat more with partners and connect with you further on this, James, also to learn more about your experience, knowing that a variety of different pilots in this space are happening right now. I would also just, if I might offer a few final reflections, Stephanie? I know we're coming to a close. Okay, super. Just noting that the Blue Carbon Action Partnership is really excited about thinking about deeper engagement with governments and supporting them. Noting our first National Blue Carbon Action Partnership is in Indonesia, and really, looking forward to their leadership and their ongoing leadership in the blue carbon space in helping to show how aligning and coordinating policies can help to streamline their engagement in blue carbon and think more about financing in a variety of different spaces. Also thinking across their international commitments in not just in climate, but also biodiversity and elsewhere. And then finally, I wanted to talk, just briefly mention also that we often are working with our private partners and thinking about how they might be able to invest in blue carbon, and also thinking about investing more broadly in these ecosystems. So in both of those spaces, certainly there's a lot of opportunity for private investment. Some of it related to the carbon element specifically, some of it outside of that and in a broader ESG approach. Decarbonization, of course, being the ultimate goal here, but also thinking about how the voluntary carbon market could help scale these benefits, being really important for those private partners. And then finally, wanted to note that there are really other exciting initiatives happening. I know the report outlines many of them, but we have some really exciting goals set out by Mangrove Breakthrough and others that have overlapping goals that might not be explicitly blue carbon, but certainly very overlapping. So looking forward to supporting Mangrove's Breakthrough in their goal of mobilizing $4 billion for mangroves. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Emily. And you've really icely highlighted that keen interest, which I'm really feeling from this panel in terms of continuing the conversation on, continuing that collaboration. We've had I'm going to take one final question from the audience, and thank you so much, audience. You've come up with some fantastic questions for our panel. It's a question for Ed in the UK. Are current marine policies adequate to promote the development of blue carbon projects to contribute to net zero aims?
Yeah, thanks. A really good question. So I'll only speak to the UK experience. I wouldn't afford to speak on a global level here. But I think the first point to make is one that's been made a few times during the panel, which is the sequestration or the mitigation contribution of blue carbon. Whilst it has a role to play, it is modest, and I think we do need to recognise that, and actually to realise that role. There's a lot you need to get right. You need to get the science right. You need to know what the capacity is of these habitats to store and sequester carbon. You need to be able to map them accurately. There's a lot of hoops to jump through in order to include it in your inventory and then potentially go on to include it in carbon markets. Again, other panelists and the presentation have spoken about this. So I think perhaps the way to frame the question is, are current policies adequate to protect blue carbon habitats for the range of benefits they provide? And I think the answer is there's always more work to do. And in the UK, as I said, as I highlighted, we have the Blue Carbon Evidence Partnership, recognizing that there are gaps in our own knowledge. And more broadly, we've got a natural capital accounting program, and we've got programs, policies that are trying to drive investment into our domestic markets as well. So there is certainly more to do, but I would just encourage the audience to think about it more than about sequestration benefits.
Thank you so much, Ed. You've really brought out there that real importance of understanding the evidence, the value of what there is to protect, which I think James mentioned earlier as well. I'm going to turn to Lisa for the final question of today, and that's to really share with us how international, regional, national, or even local blue carbon partnerships and other initiatives can help us all as a community and help promote the development of effective blue carbon projects.
Thanks, Stephanie. Well, I think the answer is that we work better together, and that partnerships and collaboration that brings together these diverse stakeholders across governments, academia, NGOs, private sector, local communities, all can contribute to achieving a bigger impact than if any of us was to go in alone. And so partnerships, especially when there's good governance and trust between partners, allows for these important opportunities to exchange information and experiences, to increase the technical capacity across all the partners. And that ranges from the carbon side, but also to some of the emerging topics that we've talked about here, like developing adaptation metrics. It also helps to identify the investment needs for research when you're talking about this across different collaborations and partnerships. I think that the last point on the importance of the partnerships to help promote blue carbon actions is really about that. What I've seen across some of the partnerships that I've been involved in is the promotion and encouragement of transparency and social integrity when partnerships that have their members working together to share and promote best practices, while socially holding each other accountable to understand and to meet these high quality standards that we're all aiming for.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Lisa, and thank you to all of the panel and the audience as well. It's been a really dynamic session. We heard at the very beginning about those international goals being really fundamental to driving action, of the importance across all panelists. You've really highlighted the importance of partnerships, of science, of financing, of mobilizing carbon markets, but not just carbon value, thinking about the wider, broader benefits as well. And that need to take a really integrated, holistic approach to realize the true benefits. I think we heard a great example from James in Kenya in terms of how you've been working through your mangrove management plan to set out your governance, to think about your science, your partnerships, your legislative frameworks, and you've shared some really rich lessons as well. I think the conclusion from this discussion is certainly that as a community, we need to keep sharing those lessons, keep talking, have more exchange. The partnerships that the report and our speakers have highlighted are absolutely key to that. And I think Emily put forward a great proposal for us to keep talking as well. As a final wrap up, I'm going to turn to a few speakers to give you the opportunity to share your 15-second key message that you'd like to give to the audience and for them to take home today. Perhaps if I turn to Lisa, then Ed, and then Emily, James, if you want to jump into. Lisa, over to you first.
Thank you. So my final reflections and key messages are that blue carbon is more than just carbon markets. It's part of the nature-based solution umbrella. That's the actions to protect, restore, and sustainably manage blue carbon ecosystems, and directing that finance and resource equitably to communities, while recognizing that these benefits for blue carbon are truly local to global, contributing to climate action for mitigation and adaptation, biodiversity, sustainable development, all with these local impacts.
Thanks, Lisa. Ed?
I promise Lisa and I didn't coordinate. Mine is don't see blue carbon as only sequestration, take integrated action at international and national levels to deliver its benefits for adaptation, biodiversity, and livelihoods.
Fantastic. Emily?
Echoing the message of partnerships, we really look forward to connecting on engaging with individuals on country goals, and also thinking more deeply about some of these international challenges and how we might be able to best support in unlocking finance and thinking more deeply about the broader space in blue carbon.
Fantastic. And finally, James, you have the opportunity to have the final word.
My final word, yes, Stephanie, is blue carbon can help us accelerate our achievement of SDGs, our Paris Agreement, and of a global biodiversity framework. And if we look at the Article 6.2, how can we now move in and use the integrate blue carbon ecosystem in what we are calling the international transfer of mitigation outcome? We feel under NDCs, we can use the blue carbon ecosystem to achieve the 8 modes and for the benefit of the people, the climate, and the biodiversity.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, James. Thank you all for this incredibly rich discussion. Please do look at the handbook when you have a chance. Its details are on the slide in terms of how to access that. And lastly, my many, many thanks to the authors, to the panel, to you, the audience, and to the Secretariat. And with that, I wish you a pleasant day and goodbye.